Getting off your phone is the hottest online trend. Your first thought may be, how can it be an online trend if it's offline? And to that I say that the reason is, in all seriousness, I think it makes sense that with the overwhelming content we're seeing online today and the hostile internet culture that's not even being suppressed, but it's being promoted, that a counterculture movement has to arise. And also, how else are people supposed to share this movement, as the internet is the primary way that information is shared nowadays, especially among young people? But also, I can't help but feel slightly conflicting feelings about this trend, and also that I feel a little bit like a hypocrite. Yeah. Being someone who at times, kind of lot, posts pro-offline content on the internet, which I stand by, but also I wouldn't be posting on YouTube if I didn't love the internet. Okay, that's a bad way to put it. I don't love the internet. There are very serious problems that have arose from social media and smartphones in general. Kids can't read now. Everybody hates their body, and influencers spend more on bags than some people make in an entire year. It's rough out here, which if you've seen any of my videos before, I have talked about at length. While I do talk a lot about these bad elements that happen because of the internet and because of being online, when I think about being on the internet, while all of those negatives do come up, I can't help but also think of the good that's on here. There's great videos and articles, interesting people with interesting stories, and there's an untapped potential about the music, movie, information that you can learn on the internet and that you might not have had a way of learning about before. So maybe I don't want to totally cut it out of my life. Don't get me wrong, I have made very intentional strides in the past few years to get off my phone and to get off the internet. I read. I have hobbies. I see people on a regular basis that are my friends or my family. But I can't help but think that there is a happy medium out there. Maybe that's just wishful thinking, and while there's so much to gain from getting offline and disconnecting from your phone, there's also a bit to lose. So today I just kind of wanted to talk about how we got here, the pros and cons of being online versus offline, and also to maybe test it out for myself. If you couldn't tell, I'm going to be leaning fully into my hypocrisy, and I'm going to be doing a little offline day. I've seen it a lot online, obviously I'm making a whole video about it, and I've yet to do a truly offline day where it's like I'm only using my analog things that I have and dumbing down my phone to the point where it's just call and text. Also, just to let you know, these are going to be little interludes or little segments that are going to be throughout the video, but with all this hubbub about getting offline and going analog, I felt that I truly needed to try it out for myself before talking much on it. I think the going offline, going analog trend can be a bit serious, a bit intimidating. Like you have to read 10 books a week or hike a mountain to watch the sunrise to really be connecting with yourself and be offline. And I don't think that's true. I think a way to stay offline is to be having fun, maybe not all the time, but a good portion of the time. I feel pretty good about myself that I can do this, especially since I plan on having some fun today. I will say, even though I'm not anti-internet, I definitely am anti-infinite scroll. In my opinion, once social media shifted from being more creator-based to an endless feed of rage bait and people trying to go viral, many problems started to arise. This is where the digital fatigue begins. I don't know if it was really the case or not, but at least in my memory, and I think a lot of people's memory, in the late 2000s to the early 2010s, there used to kind of be an end to scrolling. There were obviously still explore pages, but myself and many people, I think, mainly stayed on our following feed, and if we did go to the explore pages, it'd be, clicking on a picture and then going through that whole person's account. It wouldn't be staying on the explore page just to scroll through thousands and thousands of pictures. Because I do remember Instagram, way back OG Instagram, the explore page was similar to like For You page and stuff now, like it was randomly generated content, but it didn't refresh every minute to my memory. And also, it wasn't as tailored to the singular person, so you couldn't necessarily get as sucked into it. It's not that I don't think scrolling and over-consuming media didn't happen, because it definitely did, but I think it happened on a much smaller scale, which meant you weren't totally ruining your attention span.
Pay attention, I said your favorite word, the back rooms.
And then in turn feeling bad about yourself. For example, I used to love watching the British Vlog Squad. At a period of time, it was probably the only thing that I watched. Did I watch too many of these videos? Probably, but also I do remember going through all their accounts and eventually hitting the end of the content. But odds are, after finishing watching all the videos, I think I would just get off my iPod and go do something else, or stay on my iPod and play like a mini game. I think this is a way that the internet has changed, which has gone kind of unnoticed. For apps like TikTok, you don't just scroll through 3 or 4 videos, find someone that seems funny and interesting, go through their whole page and maybe follow them, but instead you have to have a creator's videos pop up algorithmically like 5, 6, 7 times until you actually recognize them, and then maybe, just maybe, you will click on their account and follow them or watch through the rest of their videos, which just seems like such a shame. There's something so fun about following along closely with a creator that you really connect with their content with, instead of just kind of half-ass consuming what they post. And even on the older social media apps that did have the infinite scroll, like Vine for example. I know, throwback, aging myself here. What I remember most about Vine is finding like certain people that I really enjoyed and just going through their accounts over and over again. Like, I remember seeing the viral content sometimes and being like, ugh, what is that garbage? Honey, you don't even know yet. That could just be my personal experience, and maybe I'm just misremembering the internet. But I do think the creator first, or friends and family first format of social media was way less overwhelming, which is the opposite of what we have now. Now there's endless options, and the viewer is switching constantly between the highs and lows of emotions. For example, swiping, and the first video that pops up is someone literally dying, and then you swipe again and the next video is some silly fart video. This constant back and forth with emotions and feelings and thoughts and opinions is just exhausting. Now on the flip side, I don't think the algorithm is necessarily all bad though. It's a great way to connect with new people and new ideas. You just have to know when to stop scrolling. This previous week, I have been kind of getting myself into the habit of not being on my phone when I first wake up in the morning. Like, obviously I check it initially to kind of wake up, but last Sunday I started the Artist's Way, which requires you to have a morning moment where you just write. I usually just sit in silence while I do it, and I'm really liking it so far. If you don't know what the Artist's Way is, it's a 12-week program where every day you essentially work on your creativity. The goal is for some people to unblock their creativity. For me, sort of to unblock it, but I want to just kind of let my creativity flourish more. Get comfortable with myself as an artist, which I'm like, artist? Girl, you're not an artist. But I am. The book would want me to say that I am. So you do this thing called morning pages, which every morning you write 3 pages of basically stream of consciousness, thoughts, feelings, whatever. And then there's prompts, some other stuff that helps you move through the process and get to know yourself, get to know your creativity better. And I found the Artist's Way online. Pro of being online. Maybe would I have found it in my real life? Potentially. One of the main things I really like about the Artist's Way is sort of like her encouragement of play. Some of the prompts are not silly because they are helpful, but they have a very lighthearted attitude towards them. There's definitely some not heavier but more serious things to consider in this book, but it's presented in a way that's friendly. You don't have to be any type of person to get into the book. You don't even have to be an artist, which is a part of kind of what she says in the foreword. And I think I like how this applies to myself and how I view hobbies, my artistic endeavors, and being offline, is because for a lot of what I do, while I take it seriously because I want to grow and I enjoy it a lot, my favorite things about my hobbies is that they aren't pressured. It is a bit generic advice that is given with going analog, where people say lean into like your childhood hobbies and the favorite things about your childhood. And I think that's very true, even if it feels corny after you hear it time and time again. So this morning I'll be starting with the Artist's Way, having my kind of meditation moment, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later. Well, overall, I love the idea of getting offline and maybe even going analog. Where I think this trend begins to bother me is the way it's getting trendy in the commercialized, do this or buy this to be cool type of way. It's following the pattern, like always, of people getting their temporary pleasure in buying a new thing or feeling like they're included in the in crowd. Except it's just a band-aid on a gushing wound. It's very clear that a lot of people are very aware that they are experiencing digital fatigue. But I don't think a lot of people realize that you genuinely have to rewire your brain to get back to where you were before, if the before even existed. Just buying things and hoping that they fix you is just falling into the same cycle rebranded. When I watch or read the How to Get Off Your Phone pieces, I love the idea, but why is there 20 things on this list and why are they all expensive? Now I'm going to say my opinion here, not that this whole video isn't just an opinion, but you'll get what I'm saying when I say the opinion. I think to actually get yourself offline, you have to be willing to do the work to get to the core of the issue. Not only analyzing your feelings about scrolling and being on the internet, but analyzing how you consume media or things without it. By this I mean, don't buy a new book if you're wanting to try and read more. Go back to yourself and read one of the books that you already have to see if you like those books, if you like that genre, if you even like reading in general. Don't get a digital camera. Force yourself to be present in the moment without capturing it, and maybe you'll realize while you don't want to be on your phone, you don't necessarily need a replacement for your phone anyways. You have to deprive yourself of the dopamine hit that is the new, whether that be new items or new videos, it's kind of the same thing. And without the new, you have to kind of sit in like the core of you, the old part of you, what you truly desire, what you're missing in your life. It's also definitely not even as simple as what I just said. But as the therapists say, you have to acknowledge the problem to be able to get over it. Overall, I think it's important to be conscious of why you want to get off your phone, why you want to buy analog items, aside from it just being trendy online. And you should think about it before you just throw your phone into the ocean and buy a whole bunch of new stuff, trying to fill the hole that you've been digging for yourself for years. Another more petty issue I have with this is, why are people buying analog items new? There are certain things like a flip phone, for example, where you kind of have to buy it new so your phone doesn't just die randomly because it's old as shit or explode the second you're added to a group chat. But a digital camera, for example, you do not need to be buying it off of TikTok Shop. I promise you most of the ones you can find in thrift stores or in your parents' basements will work if you just replace the battery. One last thing in this section. Earlier I mentioned how getting offline and the offline trend can be a bit intimidating. And I think that's because it's presented as kind of an all or nothing scenario. Oh, you want to be offline? You consider yourself a bit offline? I better not see a single Letterboxd review reviewing anything, or else you are a fraud. As people, it's not uncommon for us to make promises to ourselves, maybe sometimes wishful promises, like tomorrow is the day that I never go on Instagram again, and then 3 days later you're back on Instagram. And you, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, feel guilty that you aren't able to go cold turkey and quit your phone forever, while it seems like the other people who are getting offline are able to, which in turn makes you judge yourself and then think that people are judging you, and it's kind of just a whole big sad mess. There's so much pressure to be cured of your phone addiction and to never want to even touch an algorithm again, which I do understand because it is an important issue, and also a lot of people do need to face the music and the reality of their phone addiction. But there's a reason it's called a phone addiction. It's hard to break addiction, whatever it might be, which without people setting themselves up properly to try to really get off their phone, they're just gonna go back to scrolling and having a 12-hour screen time and just reposting, liking, getting offline videos, hoping that maybe one day they can do it, which is where the trendiness of it all comes to fruition. Quick side note, it's also definitely considered trendy because a lot of the popular videos about getting offline are often very visually pleasing, and the most popular ones usually feature an unrealistic standard of what getting off your phone will actually be like, except that life that we all all see on our phones and envision in our head is really just a dream. I feel like at this point in time, we don't really have a system in place where people can sustain being offline while still also staying informed. And that can range from even just kind of the silly stuff, which is understanding pop culture and pop culture moments, something that a lot of people are very interested in, to also political awareness, seeing what's actually happening in the world and how people feel about the current state of the world. And it's hard to maintain without our phones and social media. For example, when it comes to politics, if you're really committed to being off your phone, being off technology, no iPad, no computer, are you only going to be consuming mainstream media now? Something that we know is typically a very sterilized reporting on what's going on in the world. Well, you could argue that it's equally as bad for people to be getting their news from the internet, especially short form content. I think that time is money nowadays, and a lot of people don't have a lot of time or money. So with short form content or shorter articles, at least people are getting a gist of what's happening in the world instead of being totally blind to it. What happens after that, if people are only getting their information from short form media, that's a different conversation for a different video, but I digress. Honestly, I think for most people, just not scrolling and scrolling for hours on end and having a hard limit on your screen time is enough for people to be happier and feel like they aren't so connected to their phone to the point where it's truly only negative. Maybe I'm biased because I don't believe the internet is entirely evil, or at least that it doesn't have to be, but definitely you don't need 1,000 gadgets to be offline. You just need the ability to, when you're on your phone, see what you need to see, and when you get the tiniest little inkling of feeling bored or feel like you're starting to doom scroll, being able to go, I don't think I want to do that anymore, and getting up and going off your phone and taking a walk. And eventually, once you get into that habit, you'll start to use your phone less and less anyways. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying that you might not need a digital detox, which is a crazy sentence that just came out of my mouth. And I'm definitely not saying that I have figured out for myself and that I'm the perfect balance of off and online, because I definitely am not. And my final thought on this portion of the video is that you shouldn't feel like you're living an offline life or you're living an online life. You should just be living life. That sounds kind of bullshit, but I really think that's where the middle lives. It shouldn't feel overwhelming. It should just feel like a part of your day. So it's about 1 p.m. I did all of my chores for the day and then I ate a bagel in silence. So that was fun. But now I'm on to my next activity, which is sewing. If you've seen this channel before, you know I like to sew. But something I haven't done before when it comes to sewing is following a paper pattern. Yes, this is about 40 pages worth of paper. I'm not going to walk you through the step-by-step of it all because this isn't a video that's about sewing. Most of what I sew is either a shitty pattern that I make for myself, or it's just literally step-by-step following a YouTube tutorial and kind of just measuring and cutting. I know, the proper way to sew. Today I plan on making a nightgown, even though it's mostly just for practice. The reason I want to practice is because of my year-long project when it comes to sewing, and that year-long project is making my own collection, my own little fashion line. I want it to be wearable, but also kind of artistic. There'll be a few pieces of each where it's like, yeah, maybe I wouldn't wear that to just walk around the city. And the reason I want to practice working with lighter weight fabrics is because my idea for this collection, there is a lot of lighter elements to it. Lighter as in the actual fabric and also the color tone. So far with my year-long project, I've finally completed the mood of it, the style I want it to be. You're gonna have to hear me out a little bit while I explain the idea, the creative idea behind this fashion line I want to make. To get this idea, I spent a lot of time reflecting on my life, what I'm into now, my past, my family, and I was listening to Sophie, R.I.P. Sophie. She was an electric dance artist. She was one of the pioneers for hyperpop, and I love hyperpop. So I was listening to her, in particular the song Infatuation, and that song makes me feel like what I imagine my grandma feels when she's in church. Like that internal movement. It's like ethereal, you know? Also, for some context, I was raised Catholic. A lot of my family is still Catholic. I am not a practicing Catholic, but there's a lot of that in me. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten until 8th grade, so like 13, 14 years of my life. So then that kind of got the wheels turning in my head, those wheels being, what if my grandma had hyperpop? Would she be religious? Obviously, she would still be religious, and you know, but when it comes to religion, there's a lot of very flowy, light imagery. There's also a lot of dark imagery, which is sort of how I visualize hyperpop. Not to say I also don't sometimes see it as kind of the grungy dance floor, like cigarettes in the back room. But also, we all know that feeling when you're on the dance floor, when you're in the club and like the perfect song hits and you just feel like you're transcending. So overall, I want my collection to be kind of a cross between the hyperpop, which is bold colors, some crazy patterns, and then crossing that with some 70s inspired elements. Obviously the 70s also had a lot of very bold patterns, so I think that there is a actual like similarity between the two, sort of a bridging point. And I picked 70s because my grandma would have been a mid-20s, kind of my age in the 70s. And then I'm also going to be incorporating some classic Catholic, I guess, symbolism maybe. I better not see anyone goddamn take my idea or I'm going to be really mad. I think what I love about sewing is first of all, the ability to make your own clothes, which I've said countless times before. And it really is an analog activity that you can do by yourself and feel really creative by yourself. I'm not sure if I'll finish sewing this today. We will see. Fingers crossed. So I actually did finish the sewing somehow. Instead of deciding to show it off like a normal person, I decided instead to run through scenarios that I would imagine someone would be wearing this nightgown in. Most of it's a lot of dancing. We also have escaping the killer. And then, looking like I'm cold in a haunted mansion. That's always a fun one. And then obviously a catwalk. Also, I do need to put a lining in this. That's why I'm wearing pants. And I'm also wearing a tube top underneath this. You can't really see it exactly, but I promise I'm wearing clothing underneath this. I mean, you can clearly see my pants. But that's the last thing I have to finish on it. Something that is particularly interesting to me is that if the being offline trend and collective movement continues to hold true, what will that mean for the internet, and also what will it mean for the real world? I think there's this ideal now that people have if everyone gets off their phone, and that ideal is basically just the 90s happening again. Understandably, the 90s is pretty romanticized, and for good reason. You could call and email people, but it wasn't constant. People were out and about more. Bar culture, for example, that's something that people really miss the dynamic of, like being able to go to a bar, a restaurant, or just a place in general and meet new people, maybe meet a potential romantic partner or something. And overall, that life was just much more simple and better then. And I think if this trend and this movement holds true, we could get to something similar, but let's be honest, we can sadly never go back to the vibe of the 90s again. But also, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Something that I think is more probable to change in the upcoming years is the actual internet if people are getting off of it more. Specifically with influencers, creators, and kind of the overconsumption culture. While in the past people gained followings and even went viral, there was no promise of money or even fame necessarily. The content being made was just for pure enjoyment. Today, the internet and a lot of creators go into it with the hope of blowing up, maybe just going viral, and gaining access to the things that go along with that. I'm not here to dismiss people who have large followings and or passionate about what they do, but I think the fact that we have influencer brand trips and people are commenting underneath those videos saying like, ugh, I wish I was there, as if it's anything more than just one big promotion, is concerning. And I'm not even talking particularly about like influencers that are taking places to work with a brand to create a video or just like a project or something. I'm talking about the Tarte. Obviously, that's what I'm talking about. Where it's really just, hey everyone, we're gonna pay you a bunch of money, promote our product, maybe post a silly video to get more traction to promoting our product, and people are gonna think that's real entertainment. I also think it's interesting that as the internet becomes more and more expansive, more and more people have the opportunity to gain thousands of followers. And it's slowly devaluing what it means to have a following. This isn't really a problem, but I think it's pointing to a larger question that if everyone has thousands of followers and everyone's an influencer, then what does that make it? Will it even matter? Probably most importantly for most people, will you even be able to make money in the same way? So hear me out with this one. Right now, a reason that a lot of people get into content creation, particularly the people that get into like making the rage bait, slop, content farm ass content, get into it is to make money and in turn gain followers, but it's mostly to have those followers to make more money. With more people getting more popular and posting more content, the consumer or watcher is going to be spread thinner and thinner. They won't have enough time to watch every single video that pops up on their phone, especially with more and more content being made every day. And with that in mind, less content being watched because there's so much more of it is going to make businesses not want to put their money into videos and people who might not actually get the return with the video that they posted. There's also a very real possibility that it will just continue to grow and that online content and influencers are going to basically just take over entertainment. But personally, I'm hoping for the other option, which comes after people fall off because there's not enough money in online content anymore. I think brands are going to realize that using influencers isn't necessarily the only way to go about making advertisements, so they're just going to start putting it back into the companies to make better videos, henceforth kind of killing the influencer budget, and that all of the people that pump out pointless shit will eventually leave the internet because they're not gaining from it anymore. And then we will revert back to the majority of people who are posting online are doing it for the love of the game and because they love creating. I think it'll be like the early 2010s where people were really confused if you posted on the internet because it was like, what the fuck? Like, does that help you or something? And it won't really be seen as cool necessarily or like aspirational anymore. One thing to point out though, I do think that with posting online and gaining a following, even if it was kind of in a 2010s way, that there will always be a layer of celebrity when it comes to having a following. But I don't think, it'll be like how we sometimes see influencers now where it's, oh my gosh, she's famous in like a Kylie Jenner way. And instead it'll be like, oh my gosh, she's famous in like someone who's really well known in your hometown type of way. In my opinion, with the offline trend gaining more momentum, I think the individual creator, like watching through your subscription feed, watching through your following feed will come back because it's way less overwhelming, which is most people's issue when it comes to the internet. I think it'll sort of be like watching a TV show live where you tune in for your hour, your 30 minutes, and then you tune back out because, well, I don't want to watch this anymore. I don't want to watch anything random. And I know this vibe is possible because I still watch Survivor every week, and that is exactly what I do. Like, even sometimes something will come on afterwards and it looks sort of interesting, and no thanks. Also, side note here, Mr. Beast is going to be on Survivor next season. Why does he have to infiltrate everything? But I won't get into that. To end this point off, obviously this is all speculation. I don't know what's gonna happen in a few years from now or many years from now. I'm just guessing based on how I've been using the internet and also what it seems like people are feeling at the moment. So it's wine and bath time. I usually wouldn't drink on a Sunday, but because of the occasion, it just felt absolutely perfect. Also, I am wearing a bathing suit in the bathtub because I'm not trying to get demonetized. Let's run through my day a little bit and kind of decide, is the totally offline life the way to go? Honestly, I still am not entirely sure. So I started my day. Alarm clock. I have a knockoff Rise alarm clock, okay? I'm not paying a subscription for an alarm clock. My morning was absolutely magical. I felt really, really grounded in just what I was doing, especially doing my artist's way. I think eating was one of the points where I missed my phone the most. I could listen to music. It doesn't hit the same. But also, people have been watching stuff while eating since the dawn of time. Literally, the kings were watching the knights run around while they had a good meal. I don't think that's too brain-rotted for me to say that I do enjoy watching something while I eat, so I'm not just staring into space. Then I started sewing. Next time I buy a pattern, I'm buying a pattern that is like already together and I just have to cut it out because taping 50 sheets of paper together took an hour, maybe longer. I'm not kidding. And then cutting it out and then like retaping the parts where, oh my god. Usually when I sew, I watch a TV show or I watch a YouTube video. Sometimes I'll listen to music. Today, obviously, I listened to some Billie Holiday and then my CD player died and I did not feel like plugging it in. So I think I sat in silence, aside from sewing, like for 4 hours, maybe longer. And I couldn't tell you one thing that I thought about. So that's also why the thing with like being online versus offline, I swear sometimes I'm offline, like how I just today, and I'm like, I don't remember a single thought I had. Do not remember anything. I was in a liminal space in my head, and it was awesome. Another weird part about not using my phone today was when I walked to get a bagel, or when I walked to get my wine and pizza and whatever. But when I was waiting for my bagel, I wasn't missing having my phone to scroll through, but I was like, why do I feel awkward right now? Like, I feel like they're confused why I'm sitting here. Obviously, no one was looking at me. But in my head, I'm like, I feel like I should be doing something. After some reflection, I think I would do another offline day, or maybe do it once a week, twice a week, but I don't think I would truly go offline, like, permanently. There were too many times where while I was fine in my peace, by the end of it, I'm like just watching literally cable TV. I will watch cable TV right now. I don't give a fuck. I just need some background noise, not even to pay attention to it, but sitting alone with your thoughts. I was basically doing sitting alone with your thoughts challenge for the whole time that I was awake today. Anyways, since I talked mad shit this whole video, not only about the internet, but also about being analog, I thought it was time to talk about some fun, positive things about both the internet and being analog, or being offline. Sorry, I'm interchanging them. You know, I see being offline more generally, but I've been spending a little bit more time on Substack recently, and analog, huge on there. Absolutely huge, because it's a little bit more raw, you know? I don't really know how to explain it. If you've ever been on Substack, you would understand that. So my first pro of going analog is physical media hands fucking down. I know I mentioned earlier about maybe not buying a whole bunch of stuff to replace your phone and try to fix your phone addiction, but what I'm talking about right now is leaning into physical media as kind of like the fun extra, not buying physical media as a way to cure your problems, but instead just kind of, you know, it's just fun. Collecting movies and CDs, writing down things in a journal very consistently so you can have a fun log of what your life is like. Not only is it typically more cost effective, especially in the long run, for now at least, you never know when all the prices are going to start going up on the offline analog stuff, we will see. But for right now, it is more cost efficient to build a collection of movies, music, whatever that may be, so you don't have to have a reoccurring payment for it. Yes, it does cost money to get a bunch of movies and a bunch of like TV box sets so that you can watch your favorite shows, but if you're able to get enough of your favorite shows, enough of these movies, you can eventually cancel your streaming service, and then you don't gotta pay for it again unless you buy more movies and TV shows. I'm also realizing now that I didn't really talk about streaming in this video, and I think that is a very big part of why people want to go analog. So I guess let me talk about it now for a second. I think one of the reasons that people should be more analog and embrace physical media, which this is something that a lot of people have noticed, is that if you're around my age, younger or a little bit older, our generation has never really owned anything when it comes to our movies, music, God, even just things that we have on our phone, photos. Like, we own our photos, but like they could easily just disappear in the blink of an eye if you lost your phone or you dropped it or something. So getting older and coming to the realization that you have no kind of tangible memory of parts of your life that are very important, like music, like movies, like photos. That's scary as hell. And also, streaming in particular is so expensive, and it's infinite. You have to pay for it. You know, budgets are tight. I don't think people want to pay for it forever. They don't want to pay for it now. They especially don't want to pay for it forever. Anyways, physical media is also super gratifying to own. I have a small but mighty CD collection, and I love it. For the longest time, I was never a whole album listener, if that makes sense. I always just usually listen to one or two songs off an album or from an artist. And getting CDs and starting my collection, I'm able to dive deeper into artists, which is really nice with music. And also I'm able to form more solid opinions on what I actually like to listen to, instead of just listening to whatever comes on shuffle. Like, don't get me wrong, sometimes a shuffle's nice, sort of like talking to someone and they tell you a new song to listen to. But being able to pop in a CD that I own and knowing that I'm gonna like what's being played is so awesome. A pro of the internet information, which I did talk about this earlier, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. While there is information overload at times, and it can be a lot, I'm honestly glad that I live in a time where I can look things up. I grew up in a pretty privileged and sheltered way where without the internet, I don't think I would know like a portion of what I do now. And I also don't think I would be as curious as I am now about other people's lives, cultures, just the world in general without growing up online. Shout out Tumblr. We were learning a lot on there. Some of it was good. Some of it was a lot in some interesting ways. If you were on Tumblr in the 2010s, you know what I mean. But I think it's so fun to be able to learn something new on a whim or fact check something when you're not sure if you're right about it without having to go to the library. I don't know. Another internet pro is being able to connect with people. I know I particularly love this because obviously connecting with my friends, but being someone who posts online, I love connecting with an audience. I love this connection in multiple ways, to be able to connect with my viewers and other content creators and feel excited and happy that I have a community of people with common interests. I do think there are issues when it comes to connection online, that somehow we're over connected and then also living in a time where everyone is the loneliest they've ever been, which is a whole separate other topic that I could get into. Maybe I will one day. But I think when it comes to online friends or even the friends in your real life, it's easier than ever to stay connected with someone that you might have fallen out with in years past. You can stay up to date with them without living in their direct area. You can send each other funny videos or old pictures and kindle that friendship over text. Another pro for analog, you feel more connected to yourself. I know it might sound cheesy, but like interacting with other people, you have to spend time with someone to get to know them. The way you have to spend time with yourself, being truly present with yourself to get to know yourself. And it's so simple to do. There's so many analog activities that don't require a lot of money or time necessarily, that you can kind of tap into maybe your younger self or just who you are at your core and really think deep as to like who you want to be. I'm not saying you're always making groundbreaking revelations or improving your mind, body, and soul like the second you do an analog activity, but at the very least, you can just learn how to have fun and be happy with your own company and actually like yourself. Last internet pro, I absolutely love an edit, a video edit. Sadly, without TikTok, I have been deprived from them for a few weeks now, but that is okay. Sometimes on Instagram, they'll pass me by and I'll watch them and I'll... So fun. I love that. I know it sounds silly, but it's been a long-lasting enjoyment that I've experienced and love about the internet. And I don't think, now stay with me here because this is going to sound a little bit crazy, I don't think that I would have the job that I have now, like my 9-to-5 job, without loving video edits. So you know that I had One Direction edits blasting on my iPod. I was watching so many sad movie compilations. Like, I think I forget what they were called, but they were like multiverse, like fan edits. I don't even know. But I was crying to them. I was loving them. Music was always on point. And I would get all up in my feelings over them. And honestly, sometimes I see videos today on my phone and they're like a hope core about the beauty of life or like music and film. And I'm smashing that like button.
You're probably going to find out about it anyway. So here's a little preemptive truth-telling. There's no happy ending.
That's the end of the list. There's probably more, but I think for now, that's just a good reminder of that there's good on both sides of being offline and being online. This video is probably going to be really long, so I thought I would end it off with a short message. So my final total for the day was 5 hours and 58 minutes, but wait. It's because the night before I did this, I fell asleep watching Bob's Burgers. So you can see on this graph that it ends before 6 a.m. when I was having my screen time. And then all of the additional time comes from me having to look stuff up on YouTube, I'm not gonna lie. I was getting so frustrated with my sewing machine that I was looking stuff up. But I still think I did pretty good. I don't think that being offline means having to ditch the internet forever, but simply decentering social media, apps, and the internet from your lifestyle. If you're like me, someone who enjoys the internet, you don't have to go all in one way or the other. You just have to find the right balance for you where you feel genuinely happy in the way that you consume media. Maybe you try out being offline hardcore for a period of time. I would say the opposite, like you could try out like hardcore being online, but we already all know how that goes, so like maybe don't try that out. But you don't have to feel guilty for maybe not totally conforming to this offline trend and still enjoying certain aspects of the internet, because I think there are things that can be enjoyed. Okay, I'm done now. Tell your friends you love them, limit your screen time, and like and subscribe for more videos like this, whatever this video is gonna actually turn out like. Also, to be so analog today, I printed out my script. All right, that's it. Bye.